The summer sun cast a warm, golden glow over the picturesque town of Lakeside. Nestled between rolling hills and a pristine lake, it was the kind of place where people escaped to unwind and embrace the serenity of the countryside. The heart of summer had arrived, and the town's residents eagerly awaited the long days of sunshine and the cool nights by the lake. For the Thompson family, summer meant an annual retreat to their beloved Lakeview cottage. Situated on the outskirts of town, the cottage was a charming, centuries-old structure that had been in the family for generations. It was a place of cherished memories, laughter, and love. This year, however, something sinister awaited them. As the family, consisting of John, his wife Sarah, and their 2 children, Emily and Daniel, arrived at Lakeview Cottage, an uneasy feeling washed over them. They had been coming here for years, but today the place seemed different. The lush gardens that once welcomed them with vibrant blooms now looked overgrown and tangled, casting eerie shadows across the path. Inside the cottage, they found an unsettling chill in the air. Sarah, a lifelong skeptic of the supernatural, couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. She tried to dismiss it as a product of her overactive imagination, but as the days went by, the strange occurrences intensified. One hot afternoon, while Sarah was preparing lunch in the quaint kitchen, she heard the distant sound of children laughing. Assuming it was Emily and Daniel playing by the lake, she went to check on them, only to find them engrossed in a board game on the porch. Bewildered, Sarah returned to the kitchen, convinced that her mind was playing tricks on her. That evening, as the family gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and marshmallows, a shadowy figure appeared on the edge of the woods. John and Sarah exchanged puzzled glances. They couldn't make out any details, but the figure seemed to be staring at them. John called out, "Who's there?" but received no response. As quickly as it had appeared, the figure vanished into the darkness of the forest. Their unease grew with each passing day. Emily and Daniel began having vivid nightmares, recounting encounters with ghostly children who beckoned them towards the lake. John dismissed it as overactive imaginations, fueled by the strange atmosphere of the cottage. But Sarah was not so sure. One sweltering afternoon, while the children played in the lake, Sarah decided to explore the cottage's attic, hoping to find some old family photos. She climbed the creaky stairs, her footsteps echoing eerily in the quiet space. Upon reaching the attic, she found a dusty old chest containing photo albums dating back generations. As she flipped through the faded pictures, she stumbled upon a photograph that sent shivers down her spine. It depicted a group of children, dressed in outdated clothing, standing by the lake. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow, and their expressions devoid of emotion. Among them, she recognized the same shadowy figures that had been haunting their stay. Frantic and trembling, Sarah rushed downstairs to show the photo to John. He too was taken aback by the unsettling image, but attributed it to a strange coincidence or a prank by a previous guest. That night, Sarah's unease grew unbearable. She lay awake, listening to the distant sound of laughter and whispers. She could hear the faint voices of children calling out from the lake, their words indistinct but filled with longing. Unable to sleep, she finally got out of bed and went to the window. To her horror, she saw the ghostly figures of children emerging from the lake, their wet, translucent forms gliding towards the cottage. Panicked, she woke John, and they hurried to check on Emily and Daniel, who were sound asleep in their beds, seemingly undisturbed by the eerie events outside. With trembling hands, John and Sarah locked all the doors and windows, their hearts pounding in fear. The ghostly children continued to appear by the lake, their mournful cries growing louder and more desperate. John grabbed the family Bible and began reciting prayers, hoping to ward off whatever malevolent force had invaded their peaceful retreat. As the hours passed, the ghostly children's presence grew stronger, their voices echoing through the cottage. John and Sarah clung to each other, praying for dawn to break and end the nightmare. At sunrise, the haunting ceased. The ghostly children retreated into the depths of the lake, leaving behind an eerie silence. Exhausted and terrified, the Thompson family packed their belongings and left Lakeview Cottage, vowing never to return. To this day, they cannot explain the disturbing events of that summer. Lakeview Cottage remains empty and untouched, a place where the serene beauty of summertime hides a dark secret, a secret known only to those who dared to stay. Summer had arrived, and the Reynolds family was eager to escape the hustle and bustle of city life for a few weeks. They decided to rent a quaint lakeside cabin nestled deep in the woods of upstate New York. The place seemed like the perfect retreat, a serene getaway from the daily grind. The cabin was a charming two-story structure with a wraparound porch that overlooked the tranquil lake. Tall, ancient trees surrounded the cabin, casting cooling shadows during the day. The sound of the gentle breeze rustling through the leaves was like a lullaby, and the nights were illuminated by the shimmering stars reflected on the water's surface. The Reynolds family, consisting of John, his wife Sarah, and their two children, Emma and Daniel, eagerly arrived at the cabin on a sunny afternoon. The initial days were filled with laughter, fishing on the lake, and exploring the nearby forest trails. They were convinced that this would be the perfect summer vacation. However, as the days turned into weeks, strange occurrences began to unfold. It started with the sound of footsteps on the porch during the night. At first, they dismissed it as wildlife, but the rhythmic tapping of shoes against the wooden boards persisted. John investigated one night, but there was nothing there, just an empty porch, bathed in moonlight. Emma, the inquisitive teenager, began experiencing vivid nightmares. She claimed to see a shadowy figure lurking by her window at night, whispering incomprehensible words. Her parents brushed it off as a result of an overactive imagination, but Emma's fear was genuine. One afternoon, while Sarah was cooking in the kitchen, she heard faint, distant music. She followed the sound, thinking it was one of her children playing a prank. To her surprise, she ended up in the cabin's attic. It was a dimly lit space, filled with dusty old furniture. The music was coming from an ancient phonograph, spinning a scratched and dusty record. The eerie melody sent shivers down her spine. She turned it off and hurried back downstairs, her heart pounding. As the weeks passed, the once idyllic summer began to lose its charm. The family became increasingly on edge. They argued more frequently, and their laughter was replaced by anxious whispers. The footsteps on the porch continued each night, growing louder and more persistent. One evening, as the family sat around the dinner table, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. They rushed to investigate, finding Emma's room in disarray. Furniture had been overturned, and her belongings were scattered across the floor. Emma was in tears, trembling as she pointed to the window. The shadow. It was there again, she stammered. Desperation set in, and John decided to seek help from a local historian. The historian informed them that the cabin had a dark history. It had once been the summer residence of a reclusive composer named Nathaniel Blackwood, who had lived there in the late 19th century. Blackwood was known for his eccentric behavior and had composed eerie, haunting music that was rumored to be inspired by supernatural entities. The historian told them that, according to legend, Blackwood had vanished one summer night, leaving behind only his haunting music. His unexplained disappearance had led to rumors of curses and restless spirits. Locals avoided the cabin, believing it to be cursed, and advised the Reynolds family to leave immediately. Despite their fear, the Reynolds family decided to stay one more night, determined to confront whatever was haunting them. They set up cameras in Emma's room and the porch to capture any evidence. That night, as the haunting footsteps began again, the cameras recorded shadowy figures moving on the porch and strange, otherworldly whispers. Emma's room was the epicenter of the supernatural activity. The footage showed her room engulfed in an eerie blue light, and the shadowy figure from her nightmares took shape, its distorted face inches from the camera. The family watched in terror as the figure reached out toward the lens before the recording abruptly ended. Terrified, and with no further questions, the Reynolds family packed their belongings and left the cabin at first light, never looking back. The presence of Nathaniel Blackwood and the restless spirits that his music had summoned would remain etched in their memories forever. The idyllic lakeside cabin had turned into a nightmare, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead blurred during those long, eerie summer nights. They drove away from the cabin. They couldn't shake the feeling that the haunting would continue to linger, like a ghostly melody echoing in the depths of their minds, forever haunting their summers to come. Summer vacation was supposed to be a time of relaxation and fun for Emily and her family, as they rented a charming lakeside cabin near Sunken Cove. The picturesque lake gleamed under the warm sun, and laughter filled the air as they unpacked. Yet, the idyllic setting concealed a sinister secret. On the first evening, Emily's younger brother, Danny, discovered a tattered journal hidden in the cabin's dusty attic. Its pages were filled with cryptic warnings about the lake, mentioning strange occurrences that happened during past summers. Intrigued, Emily decided to explore further, despite her parents' dismissive attitude. As the days passed, peculiar events unfolded. Each night, Emily heard whispers coming from the direction of the lake. She'd peer out of her bedroom window, but all she saw were murky waters and dense woods. She dismissed it as her imagination playing tricks, but her unease grew. One hot afternoon, while swimming in the lake with Danny, Emily felt something slimy brush against her leg. She screamed, pulling Danny out of the water. In the depths below, they glimpsed shadowy figures moving, their eyes glowing with malevolence. Trembling, they rushed back to the cabin. That night, their parents went out to a local barbecue joint, leaving Emily and Danny alone. The whispers grew louder, now accompanied by rhythmic splashes. Emily grabbed a flashlight, and they ventured to the lake's edge, the shadows dancing eerily on the water's surface. The siblings were drawn to a dilapidated boathouse at the edge of the lake. Inside, they found a weathered rowboat covered in algae. As they pushed it into the water, the whispers grew into chilling chants. Ignoring the fear gripping their hearts, they rowed toward the center of the lake. The water darkened, and the surface trembled as if it held a dreadful secret. Emily shone her flashlight into the depths, revealing a sunken village with crumbling houses and ghostly inhabitants. The villagers, trapped in a watery grave for centuries, reached out with skeletal hands, their mournful cries echoing through the water. Panicked, Emily and Danny rowed back to the cabin. But the lake's horrors followed them. Shadows crept into their cabin, crawling up the walls. The whispers surrounded them, their voices like a sinister chorus. Emily grabbed the journal and read aloud a passage about appeasing the lake's vengeful spirits. With the incantation completed, the whispers ceased and the shadows retreated. The siblings watched in awe as the lake returned to its serene beauty. When their parents returned, they shared the terrifying tale of Sunken Cove, convincing them to leave the cabin immediately. Their summer vacation was cut short, but they left Sunken Cove with their lives intact. As they drove away, Emily glimpsed the lake one last time, haunted by the knowledge of the ancient evil lurking beneath its tranquil surface. The summer vacation near the lake had transformed into a nightmare they would never forget, a chilling reminder that even the most serene places could hide darkness beyond imagination. In the heart of the countryside, Sarah and her friends sought refuge from the city's sweltering heat. They rented a quaint farmhouse nestled amidst rolling hills and endless fields of golden wheat. The promise of a peaceful summer vacation beckoned them, but they would soon discover that tranquility could be a facade for something far more sinister. Their first evening was serene, with a mesmerizing sunset casting a warm glow across the fields. As the night fell, they gathered around a bonfire, telling ghost stories and roasting marshmallows. Yet, an unsettling chill settled over them when they noticed a lone scarecrow silhouetted against the moonlit sky. Sarah's friend, Alex, jokingly dared her to approach the scarecrow. Eager to prove her fearlessness, Sarah accepted the challenge. But as she drew closer, she noticed something amiss. The scarecrow's eyes, two glimmering orbs in the darkness, locked onto her. She stumbled backward, shaken but attributing it to exhaustion. The following day, they explored the nearby village, its quaint charm belying a sense of foreboding. Locals spoke in hushed tones, hinting at a curse that befell the countryside every summer. It was the curse of the harvestman, a sinister entity said to rise with the wheat fields, thirsting for souls. Sarah's unease deepened when they returned to the farmhouse. The scarecrow, once distant, now stood at the edge of the property, its gaze fixed on her. She convinced her friends that it was a prank, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it watched her, every move. As the days passed, the countryside's beauty began to wither. Crops wilted, and the once cheerful villagers wore expressions of despair. Sarah and her friends decided to investigate, believing the legend of the harvestman held the key to the growing dread. Late one evening, they ventured into the fields, guided only by the pale moonlight. They discovered an ancient ritual site, marked by eerie symbols etched into the earth. In the center stood a grotesque effigy resembling the harvestman, its malevolent eyes gleaming with hunger. Terrified, they realized the curse was real. Sarah recited an incantation she found in an old book, hoping to break the curse and save the countryside. But as the words left her lips, the scarecrow came to life, its burlap face contorting into a sinister grin. The harvestman, now free from its slumber, lurched toward them, its arms outstretched. Sarah and her friends scattered, pursued by the malevolent creature through the darkened fields. They stumbled and fell, the curse draining their strength. Just when it seemed they would meet a grim fate, Sarah remembered the legend's end. To defeat the harvestman, one had to offer it something precious. Sarah, with trembling hands, offered a locket containing a cherished photo of her family. The harvestman halted, its eyes fixated on the locket. It snatched the offering, and its ghastly form disintegrated into the night. The curse lifted, and the countryside began to recover. Sarah and her friends left the farmhouse, forever changed by their horrifying summer vacation. They knew they had narrowly escaped the clutches of a malevolent entity, and the legend of the harvestman would serve as a chilling reminder that even the most serene places could hide unspeakable horrors.